Welcome back. We are now in chapter 1, topic 1.2, concept and use of a classification system. Every topic, as you know, is followed by a practice worksheet. This practice worksheet can also serve as a note-taking and learning tool for you. So you have two ways of doing it. You can work on the video lesson first and then look at the practice worksheet, or you can look at the practice worksheet and use it as a note-taking tool and a learning tool, and as you go through the lesson you look at the questions in the practice worksheet and find the answers to the questions in the practice worksheet using the content presented to you in this video lesson. We are about to learn a very exciting topic. So what are we going to learn today? We are going to learn why classification. In other words, what is the aim of a classification exercise or system? And then we are going to get to know the classification system that we are going to use. It's actually an age-old system invented in the 18th century, or in other words, in the year 1700. But it is still in use today. It is relevant and there's no need to modify or replace it because it's a very good system. It still works. So why replace what still works, right? However, the way we use this age-old classification system has changed over the years with the advent of newer technology and a scientific, specifically biological discovery. And traditionally, the classification system used morphology to differentiate between the animals, but now it has moved on to use anatomy, and DNA-based sequence came along with amino acid sequence of proteins a little later, and today we use DNA-based sequence and amino acid sequence of proteins to classify organisms, but we are still using the same old classification system that was invented in 1700. And we are going to learn about the binomial system of assigning names to a group of organisms that we group into what is known as species, and we're going to learn what does it mean when we say species, and finally we are going to look at DNA structure of organisms and how this has valuable information about the common ancestors that organisms belonging to different species or genus share. Why do we learn classification? What is the aim of classification? Classification systems aim to reflect evolutionary relationships between organisms. So the key word here is evolutionary relationships. So classification systems aim to reflect evolutionary relationships between organisms. And why is this important? Understanding evolutionary relationships between organisms helps scientists understand which organisms are useful and which may pose risks to other organisms or the environment. It also helps scientists to identify which species are at risk of extinction before it happens, so that scientists can take the necessary measures to preserve these organisms, right? In any case, if in a test or an exam you are asked what is the aim of a classification system, the only answer you are expected to provide is to reflect evolutionary relationships between organisms. Look at these two organisms displayed on the screen, the Australian Tasmanian tiger wolf or the thylacine and the wolf. Take a good look. What do you infer about their evolutionary relationship? Do you think they share a recent common ancestor? If they do, then they would have a similar base sequence in their DNA, and if a scientist had been able to study this soon enough, they would have been able to predict that the Australian Tasmanian tiger wolf is going to be extinct soon, and they could have preserved this animal. Look at the bat and the bird. They do share similar morphological structures. Does this mean that the bat and the bird have a close evolutionary relationship by sharing a recent common ancestor? If they did, this would be important information for scientists because, as you are very well aware, the bat has become quite famous since the start of the pandemic early 2020, and it has been receiving a lot of bad press as the host of origin for the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is the cause for the COVID-19 pandemic. And if the bat was really the host, and if it did share a recent common ancestor with birds, that would be important information, because then we would have to be careful about our interaction with birds as well. Now that we know the importance of a classification system and its aim, let's carry on to learn about the classification system itself and how it has moved from using morphology to anatomy to base sequences in DNA and sequences of amino acids in proteins in an organism. And also let's learn about the binomial nomenclature and what is a species.